what are you looking for?
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic on YouTube. It's good to be with you, my friends.
Oh, I guess I ain't talking.
Chuck Knox, Waterboy.
Like they don't know that. What are you looking for?
We got Del Partridge coming on the show later.
Is not what Del Partridge is not in there. What are you looking for?
He's not. I was just looking at some text that I might bring in here. That Del. So Del came on to talk about kind of masculinity and sharing the gospel and kind of our feminine culture and all that stuff. And it got me. He got me thinking. You know, one of his points in our interview with him was him just kind of talking about how Jesus was masculine and how he portrayed it in boldness. Boldness, and what was the four things? Boldness, resolve. Do you remember the other two?
No, that's why actually I'm gonna go back and watch it myself.
Yeah, boldness, resolve. Anyways, tune in the show for that. But growing up in our culture, I think there's actually one of the things he was getting at it. There's a huge timidity of people wanting to share the gospel, because they're afraid of, you know, he gave a couple kind of examples, you know, about this kind of timidity. One was, you know, kind of rejection. They're afraid of rejection. They're not confident in sharing the basic facts and presentation of the gospel, or they don't know how to answer. Apologetics. Yeah, they don't know how to answer the questions. And you reading through the Gospels, one of the things that strikes you is that Jesus is constantly knowing that he's walking into a situation where he's going to get into an apologetic fight. Yeah. No, that's right. And
well, he's instigating those actually.
He's intentional. He's intentional about it. Yeah,
he's like going in because he sees weakness. And
he's like, hey man, you just called the Pharisees liars. He's like, well, also the Sadducees too, and the lawyers, and you know, he kind of goes into it. But this is kind of an interesting text because it kind of illustrates some of these things. And this is Mark chapter 3, just verses 1 through 6. He says, and again, Jesus entered the synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand, and they watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. You know, so the whole tension there between healing and Sabbath keeping, according to the Pharisees. And so they're watching Jesus, and Jesus said to the man with the withered hand, "Come here." And he said to everybody, obviously he turns around to the crowd, and he says, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill it?" But they were silent. And he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." Now, you think what's interesting is when he asked the question, "Is it lawful to do good or harm on the Sabbath?" Knowing the tension in the room about, if I'm about to heal this man's hands, and these people are going to use this as a justification to eventually come and murder me. Because one of the charges against Jesus was he pretended to be God. He was God. And then one of the other charges was that he wouldn't keep Sabbath. Right. And he's a breaker of the law. Breaker of the law. But Jesus, I mean, I think of how many people in our society won't answer the question, is homosexuality a sin? How many pastors?
And you know, that's a good point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
How many pastors won't touch certain subjects because they know everybody's in the room watching them, and they don't want to have to, and they're timid because of the firestorm that might come their way. But Jesus looks around the room, and he's like, oh, you know, he's angered and he's grieved at the hardness of these people's heart, and he heals the guy.
And you know, as you were talking about this, all I could think about was the fact that Jesus actually cared for the people that were in front of him.
That's right.
So it wasn't just to pick a fight or make a point. He was seeing that their hypocrisy, their lack of actual understanding of the law, allowed people to go on being hurt. So you got a person.
They were mad at Jesus for breaking the Sabbath. Over the guy that actually got healed.
And well, he wasn't breaking the Sabbath. The Sabbath actually has these clauses in there that allow for this, right? For this very thing. Exactly. Mercy and all that stuff. So he's pointing out the fact that they don't actually know the law, who are supposed to be teachers of the law. Or at least if they know it, they're being hypocrites in how they deal with it. So first he was caring for the person in front of him in both situations. The other thing is that I think we have shame flipped upside down. So we think that, oh, we should be ashamed about how the world should view us. Instead of, we should be ashamed that we don't care enough about a homosexual to tell them the truth.
That's right.
Right? Like that's where the shame should be. And we have this shame flipped on the wrong end of this. We should be ashamed that we aren't bold enough to say abortion is murder. Right? Like we should be ashamed to say, we're ashamed to say to someone, I'm sorry, God made you a man. And God made you a woman. And you need to act in the way that God has made you. But because we're ashamed of the gospel and we have they flipped shame upside down on us. We don't want to talk like that. Right. We don't want to engage like that. Okay, so here, check.
So part of my challenge, I want to challenge our YouTube audience here. Is that
challenges for YouTube audience?
You know, when you walk into a situation, you know the biblical things that you can say to make everyone uneasy in the room. Now, I'm obviously not talking about going in and being a jerk in the room and trying to start a fire for fire's sake, but you know, you can walk into a room and you know what? If you said this, if you said, "Hey," to your friend, your lifestyle is sin. If you said to your, go ahead.
Think about in the barbershop. So this has actually been a situation that I've had to go.
And Dell talked about the barbershop example.
I don't actually go to the barbershop anymore. Not for this anyway.
It's because you live in northern Idaho and they just don't know how to.
I shaved this off because they couldn't give me
They don't know how to fade. I do my own fade.
We noticed.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice.
Look at that fade. It works for you. My friends would laugh at me. And I'm sure all your baller friends laugh at you. Anyway, but one of the things that I've noticed, in the barber chair, when you get up there, there are conversations that are going on constantly in the barbershop, right? All kinds of conversations. And all of them have to do in one way or another with some form of morality. And so when somebody makes a joke or talks about a woman in a certain way and you're not the one laughing, it's easy to be kind of seen in that moment. Or you can chuckle along and act like that you agree with them. But this is why when Dale was talking, I was thinking it's here in Moscow is a little different. So I have to actually look for moments a little harder. But being out and about when I was in Minneapolis, it was quite easy. Actually, when we travel too, it's quite easy because the sense of morality that comes from the gospel is easily get you inside of the conversations that you need to have with people. When the guys are laughing about women and talking disrespectfully about them, it's like, I'm a married man. I love my wife. I would never talk about my wife like that or my daughter like that or my mom. Right? I have a respect for women, and that comes from a regenerate heart. You guys aren't acting that way because you guys don't value women. You guys don't value the fact that God has given you the wisdom that you need to cultivate the earth, and you take that for granted, and that's why and then it comes into a whole different kind of conversation. But I'll ease into it. I was like, nah, man, my wife's great. I love my wife. I don't call her a ball and chain. She's everything to me. She gave me 7 kids, right? And then, well, why do you need so many kids, right? And, the conversation always leads back to the gospel. And we aren't always willing to take those moral moments, those moral points in a conversation and to trace them all the way back and say, I think this way because of this, right? And make that connection for people. Okay, so I have, we go through a lot of we got to talk about what we did on the show. We talked about the Supreme Court. There's rule on
17 decisions coming up on the Supreme Court docket
that they haven't ruled on yet, but they have. There's a few of them that they're going to be ruling on hopefully this week between today and Thursday. One of them we hope is the abortion case, Dobbs versus Jackson. Hopefully that stays with what
Tuesday or Thursday.
We're praying for that. Anyway, there's a bunch of cases that the Supreme Court's going to rule on: the gun rights, the church and state, immigration. One that they already ruled on that kind of bothers me that we talked about a little bit was the business law decision, where the court ruled unanimously on June 6th that the airline baggage handlers can't be compelled to resolve employment disputes through individual private arbitration, bucking a trend of recent decisions making it easier for employers to avoid class action lawsuits brought by the workers. Okay, I get what they're doing, but for me, this sets a precedent that doesn't allow private entities to come up with their own form of mediation apart from the courts. And I'm saying, wait a second, I'm a Christian. If we decide to have some sort of Christian arbitration court set up, I don't want them saying, that doesn't.
Well, we have that in all of cross-politic contracts.
Right. That's exactly right.
In contract where we do Christian mediation if there's any problem.
And if you don't want to do business with us, then you don't have to
sign up to that mediation.
Yeah, but
that's where we're heading if there's a problem.
Right, exactly. We're not going to go to the pagans and have them work out a situation between us Christians, right? So I kind of, that one, I don't know, there's a precedent set for that one that I don't like. But because we do so many stories here, I have a file of, oh my goodness, I can't believe they just did that.
Okay.
And I have this one, and I'm just going to give it to you, and I want you to read it. Don't pre-read it, just read it.
I'll just read the text.
Just read the highlighted parts.
The CDC issued sex guidance for people who think they might have been exposed to monkeypox. The recommendations include socially distanced masturbation in order to avoid spreading the virus, masturbate together at a distance of at least 6 feet. Oh, 6 feet. Social distancing without touching each other. The U.S. Center for Disease and Prevention has issued new sex guidance for people who think they might have been exposed to monkeypox. It repeats that again.
Go to the next page. You just read the highlighted part. Just keep going.
Okay. All right. The CDC also advises that those who have been exposed to are we allowed to say this on YouTube? Is this like,
hey, this is from the CDC. We are reading the CDC guidelines.
True. All right. The CDC also advises that those who have been exposed to monkeypox have virtual sex or consider having sex with their clothes on or covering areas where, oh my goodness, rash or sores are present, reducing as much skin-to-skin contact as possible. This is Gnosticism. Additionally, the CDC recommends that those potentially infected with the pox wash your hands, fetish gear, your toys, and any fabrics, bedding, towels, clothing after having sex. Limit your number of partners to avoid opportunities for monkeypox. They should just read like the biblical, definition of like, husband and wife, marriage, don't fornicate. I mean, the Bible has all these laws, I mean, basically, like, don't fornicate. Basically, summarize this: don't fornicate, and you'll be all right.
But here's the thing: so they can't. They're not saying that, but they are coming up with some sort of, and they didn't even talk about the fact there's homosexuality that is driving this, right? Yeah. So driving
monkeypox is a homosexual disease. Right.
Yeah, they didn't even. But what is interesting is I was going through that. All I could think about was the fact that we get in so much trouble when we talk about a biblical standard, objective standard from the God's law, from the Old Testament, particularly, right? But
I got a funny story for you on this.
But here's the deal. The CDC now is the new Levitical code.
Yeah.
They've given out what and who and how you can have sex, right? And they have a whole setup for it. And we sit up here, like we were talking about earlier with Jesus. Yeah. We have a hard time telling people, you shall not do that. God requires that you do not do that. Yeah. This will go better for you, right? Yeah. And so we're afraid to come up here and give a biblical standard for what sex is and who you can have it with and who you can't. But the CDC ain't having no problem coming up with a standard for it that is not helping people, that is going to leave them in their sin and allow them to even have worser lives at the end of the day.
So I was on a conference call, business call for Cross Politic last week. And on the call, I mean, it's just, I can't believe how the government regulates everything.
Yeah.
And I said in the call, we had all these problems. I'm like, well, the government's telling us to do this. And they're like, yeah, we got to do that. And the government, I'm like, so I respond in the middle of the call. I was like, it's hilarious to me that people think God's law is legalistic.
Yeah.
And I said, I much prefer God's law over government legalism that we have experienced here.
Yeah.
No one laughed in the room. It was quiet. It was quiet for like 10 seconds. It was a Zoom call. I could see everybody's faces. And no one was laughing in the room. And Anna, my assistant, Anna Hadfield, it was just paused. And so I just let it hang there for a minute.
Yeah.
Like I just kind of.
This is why I love you. Yeah. You'll do that. You're like, I have no shame in it.
And I was just kind of like this, looking in the Zoom, and no one responded. And I said, okay, all right, let's move on. And but for like 10 seconds, I called Anna after the call. I was like, was that? When I let it pause there, I was like, was that as awkward for you as I wanted it to be? And she's like, yeah, it was super awkward.
But being awkward was that you have a bunch of Christians that are like,
I don't know if these people are Christians or not. It was a business call with another entity. So I really pulled one on them.
I even love that story.
But that was fun. It was fun, just like, but the contrast between God's law and man's law. I mean, I can't tell you all the hoops they wanted us to jump through.
And they knew that they weren't good hoops.
They didn't like him either. I was like, you guys like this legalism? They're like, no. And so it's been pretty fun.
So did you say legalism?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So they didn't like them, but they were okay obeying them so long as it wasn't.
Well, and then I brought in the Bible and I said, I prefer God's law way over this kind of human legalism.
Yeah.
And I was saying it. I laughed. I was like, isn't that funny? Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And no one laughed in the room, and it was awkward for 10 seconds.
I think that we as Christians have to come to the realization that we like God's law much better than we like our current tyranny. But I don't think that we've come to that
conclusion.
That's
part of repentance.
That's part of the fight that
that's good.
I'd rather have that is part of it. I'd rather have the fight with people on what type of theonomist we would be versus if we should have a form of theonomy. Like that's the thing. Like I want to.
Okay, so how do we apply the Old Testament now? I'll have that debate.
I'll have that debate. So what do we do in the civil code? What do we do with jails? What do we do with taxation? What do we do with pornography? What do we do? How does the Bible deal with that? What does a civil code? What does the church do? What does the home do? I want to have that conversation all day. But people are arguing with us on whether we should have a biblical perspective on that whole thing. So and look, either you get Christ or you get tyranny. You get more laws at the end of the day. All right. So, hey, go right now. FightLaughFeast.com, CrossPolitic.com. Download the app. That's where everybody wants you can finish the show because that's where the rest of it is. So if you're single, you happy, Neil? Get married. If you're married, have kids, and you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
Give me one good example in the Bible where prisons were used as a positive good.
Holding a prisoner until it's time for their death sentence. That was it.
I can think of all the examples in Scripture where prisons were used for negative purposes.
Those are all pagans.
Joseph, lock him up.
Yeah, it was all pagans.
You know,
there was no command. If you're talking
Paul,
like a biblical
Peter,
command for prisons,
you go. No, I'm just saying. All I'm just making is just a statement of look at all the negative ways prisons were used.
Are you saying you want prison reform?
I want to get rid of prisons like public schools.
Facts. I want restitution or death penalty. That's it. We can have a holding place. That's it. I think that's the most biblical. The Bible has something to say on everything, baby.